Hello everybody, Drywall Repairman here. We're just doing a easy video, doing some patches on a ceiling. We had to cut out some patches in a ceiling to find a leak. Ceiling looks like Swiss cheese, so we got to fix these holes. Easy drywall repair on a ceiling, patches like this. Also, throughout the video, please give me a like, give me a subscribe, give me a comment. I'm trying to grow this channel. Also, I'm having some voiceovers here and there. I'm having issues with my camera, so hopefully you guys get to watch these videos and give me some monetization so I can buy a new camera. Please support the cause and watch the videos and leave a comment. Thank you.
Saw, keyhole saw works good, or good old-fashioned sheetrock razor blade, but you want to use it cut out, you're going to have to do wood backing. I like to use 1x2s because they're cheap and easy. Little 2-foot, 1-foot sticks like this are easy to carry and keep, or you can use other types of woods, 2x2 blocks, 2x4s. said, wood backing. You have something to screw to here, screw there. You necessarily don't have to do anything here, but if you do have backing, I like to put a piece there, put a piece here, in between a table. It's not necessary, but it helps secure the sheetrock patch, a nice tight patch. Always get at least 2 or 3 screws. I like to do a halfway, or you could just do a real long one in the center, but this is just a screw to. Screw on each side. I can do one in the center. That just keeps the backing from popping. Also the original stud. Always throw screws in your originals. That tightens up the original sheetrock. The cutout sometimes makes it loose, so we always add screws. Add screws, plenty of screws. You don't want to do all this work and then it cracks out because you didn't add enough screws. On the center, tighten up the old sheetrock. One step people always forget to do. I go in the jobs, people sheetrock the patches themselves, but they forget to tighten up the outside edges. Tighten it up. Other side, tighten it up. Tighten it up. This is 1/2-inch sheetrock, interior sheetrock, so I'm using 1.25 inch drywall coarse screws. This is your go-to. 1.25 inch, 1.5 inch is your go-to screws, coarse screws for wood framing, sheetrock screws. I like the magnetic tip on my drill. I like the extended tip. I don't like the short stubby tips. I like long. Small cordless drill. This is only like a 12 volt. I think are too aggressive. You're just trying to sink the screw in it. You're not trying to, you don't want the screw to go too deep. Just recessed enough so you can cover it with mud. Plenty of screws. Plenty of screws, the most important part. Hold it there if need be. Pack it back out. One screw. I like to do one screw on each side and one in the center so it doesn't pop on me. I use these 1x2s. A lot of guys don't like using them because they split. But I like to use them because they're easy, lightweight, cheap. I see the studs going this way. I'm going to add some screws. Tighten up this original repair. It looks like this area has been repaired before. Large area like a 4x4 area. They could have did that option, but they just want to patch it in to keep the cost down. We're going to patch it up, mud this whole area in anyways, like a big patch anyways, so we're just going to sheetrock what it needs to be sheetrock. Save the customer, client some money on their repair costs. Plenty of screws in the truss, tighten it all up. One more on the edge, one more in the center, and one more since I got one more in my hand. Alright, then you take your measurement. measurements. I can tell you these are probably like 2x2 patches. I could have just ran a 2x4 foot section, but it's all the same to me. You do what's easiest for you. As you can tell with the backing, you can screw them all in. Joint seam there, we're going to fix that. Once I mud it, it's just going to be a big mud patch, texture patch. Let's go ahead and do this one. You've seen how I cut that one out with a razor blade, but we'll cut this out with the keyhole saw and you'll see the difference in the dust. I like these jab saws, they're nice. I got this one, this nice one right here, brand new. So we're going to use my brand new jab saw, cut that one out. So you can see it's an off cut. Those two are ready. We're going to cut out this one, get it all framed in with backing, and then we can get our measurements and get these sheetrock. Once I get them sheetrocked, then we can turn around and get them taped, first coated, second coated, and textured. But let's go ahead and get this one cut out. Alright, cutting overhead, I always like to wear a mask or face guard. I don't like the dust. Drywall dust over the years is driving me nuts. Keyhole saw, nothing to it. There's a stud right here. Jab, 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 jab. That's why they call it a jab saw. These ones serve their purpose, but they are dusty. That's why I like to use a razor blade technique.
Alright, so with the keyhole saw, the jab saw, it makes a lot of dust, so I'm going to use a razor blade. I like to use a razor blade because it's easier just to cut the area, score it, snap it, don't make a bunch of dust in your face, make it a big dusty mess. That's why I always use a razor blade. You can use a sawzall, this, that jab saw, whatever you want to use, but it's the dusty mess. Wall stuff's easier to do because the mess just falls down, but when you're working overhead, you want to try to get the dust off your face. Gets in your eyes, gets in your mouth. So it's easier just to use a razor blade technique. Good old-fashioned razor blade. But just cut out the area with your razor blade. If you're cutting on the center of a stud, you're going to have to score it 1, 2, 3 times. Get it nice and deep so then you can just snap it on the stud. I always like to go center of the stud if possible. If you don't have a stud to cut to or cut center of the stud, then you're going to have to add backing. Get it cut out, use a razor blade. You're also going to burn through some razor blades. These razor blades don't last a long time. Just cutting out this sheetrock patches, these 3 little patches. I'm going to use a whole razor blade, both sides of a razor blade. Can you believe that? In the old days when I first started sheetrock, a razor blade would last all day. But now they don't want them to make them to last because they need to sell you more razor blades so they don't last that long. So with any drywall project, any patching project, always start with a fresh razor blade and you'll have to switch it out like at least once or twice. Once you get it all cut out, pull out all your old screws, any old nails. If the screws are still good, you can reuse them. I always put screws on the outside edge and the studs. This tightens up the sheetrock and it helps mark the stud for you. You can pencil it, whatever, but by putting a screw in there, you know where the stud goes. Sometimes I like to do 2 screws so it shows me the direction of the stud. So always add screws on your outside edges, get everything ready, and then use backing. If that area is still rigid, rugged, just cut it back with your razor blade. Basically, you're just cutting out a square area and you're going to be cutting a new puzzle piece to fit in. And all the plumber had to do, or whoever was before me, all they had to do was just mark a nice level square area and cut it out level from the get-go. So I'm spending the whole morning here just cutting out areas square that should have been cut out square from the get-go. Maybe you're not confident in doing the drywall project, the full project yourself, but hey, just by cutting out these areas square and getting them ready for sheetrock can save you some time and money. If I came in here and I didn't have to do all this, I would have probably knocked 30 minutes or so off the job costs for the homeowner because I can just get in there and get right to work. But I'm sitting here making a big old mess, cutting out the area square that should have been cut out square from the get-go from a proper tradesman before me. I don't understand why these guys would just come in and hack a uneven hole in someone's ceiling that they're going to have to look at for days and days until they can find a sheetrocker. Once you get the areas all cut out square, go ahead and add your backing. Like I said, I like to use these 1x2s. Those are the go-to items. If you don't have 1x2s, you can use 2x4s. Those metal clips, these are perfect. These 1x2s in these tight areas. See, I'm going to have to reach over the truss to get it in there. That's why I like to use a little 1x2 because it's easy to maneuver. And also the vent area. The vent's really low to the sheetrock. There's not much clearance. I couldn't get a 2x4 in here or a big block of wood, so I'm going to have to use a little 1x2 to get in this little tight area. In an ideal world, you want backing or wood on both sides of the sheetrock. If you can get it on all four sides, that's the perfect ideal patch. Nice, strong, secure patch. But a little 2x2 patch like this, one on each side, is more than enough. Doing on all four sides is going the extra mile. Put plenty of screws in your backing. You don't want just one screw in your backing because if you push up on the backing, it's going to pop the one screw. So that's why you always add 2, 3, 4 screws inside your backing so it's nice and tight and flush with the sheetrock. Also, the pull technique. See how I put a screw in the backing? I put a screw in there. That way I can pull down on the wood backing and hold it secure to the sheetrock as I'm pushing up, putting a new screw through it. It's not pushing the backing up. So I use that pull down technique with the screw in the stud. It saves a lot of time and headaches. It's just another tip here with putting a screw in your stud and using that as your leverage point to pull down to hold your backing. Get a few screws in the backing and then you can pull down that leverage pull down screw. It takes some time. You just want to prep the area. Most of the work here is just getting it all cut out square and getting it framed in. Like I said, this is a step that, anyone could do themselves. You don't have to be a licensed contractor to do this stuff yourself. It's just basic demo, straight areas, and add wood backing and screws. This is something anybody can do. Maybe you're confident in cutting out the sheetrock and confident in adding framing, and maybe you're confident in adding the piece of sheetrock. At least you can do all that process, and at least you have a patched up hole, and then maybe hire someone to do the mudding and texture matching. That way you don't have a big old hole in your ceiling, and it gives you time so you can shop around and find someone that's willing to do it at a fair price for both of you. But get it all demoed, and then just keep moving along. Once we get it all demoed, you're going to take your measurements. Take your measurements of your patches. I like to write them down on a scrap piece of wood. Anything I have on hand. Get your measurements for your patches. Like I said, uneven, jagged edges, you're just going to have to keep whittling them down until it's good enough for your fresh sheetrock.
Easy measure out technique. I like to take a piece of paper, a scrap piece of sheetrock or the extra wood and just write my measurements down. Since I got to go to the truck, I want my measurements.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to keep voicing over. This camera's having issues, so now I'm voicing over. We're going to take your measurements. I like to check both sides of my sheetrock patch for the same measurement. Sometimes this one's a little off, so I want to take the largest measurement and then I write it down on my scrap piece of wood. Just something I can carry outside to my truck. It's easy. This is easy. I got to take this extra piece of wood back to the truck anyways, so I'm just writing my measurements on it so I remember. Nothing's worse than going to your sheetrock to cut it out and you forgot your measurements, or you think it was something else and then you cut your sheetrock wrong. So I always like to write down my measurements whenever possible. I got the measurement for the first patch, so let's move on to the second patches. They originally said here I could have just cut out a big one long patch, but it doesn't matter for me. I'm just going to patch it in, and it's all the same because you're going to see at the end of the video that we get to mud it and texture this whole area. So I only patch in stuff that needs new sheetrock. I don't just start cutting away everything I see. I just cut out what needs to be replaced, and that's it. Because I'm going to have to mud the whole area anyways. Basically, take your measurement here. Same thing. Check both sides. Always check both sides of your patches. Get your measurements. Same thing here. I'm just going to write it down on my piece of wood. That way, remember. A simpler way would have probably been, hey, let's just cut out all these areas 2 by 2 so I remember.
I got my 3 measurements for my 3 patches. Take that to the truck. Razor blade. Remember how I changed out that razor blade? We'll look at it now. That's how bad the sheetrock blades are. These cheaper blades now, they only last one. I cut out 3 patches and the blade's already no good. So since I'm cutting new sheetrock, I want a fresh blade to cut that sheetrock nice and clean. Tools you'll need: razor blade, pencil, tape measure, your measurements, T-square. Now we can go outside and get all of our measurements cut at the truck. Since everything's in the truck, makes it easier. Alright, so as easy, I carry these 2 foot by 4 foot sections. So I got my measurements here. In one of my videos I described the recessed edge. The recessed edge right there on the sheetrock is the deep edge. I like to cut that off for patches. That's like 2.5 inches. So I like to cut off the recessed edge. I just say 2.5, 2.5. The reason I cut off the factory edge is because it's deep. And if you use it on patches, you're gonna have a deep side on your patch. You could float it out, it'll be the same. But trust me, it's easier to have a nice flush patch than have a recessed edge on a patch. That recessed edge just causes one side to be deeper than the rest. So it's easier just to cut off this recessed edge. Recessed edges with recessed edges. That's the factory recessed edge. So whenever you're doing sheetrock, recess to recess. And that channel is there for the taping, so when you tape it, it's deep and the mud just fills in that recess edge. Recess to recess, cut to cut. Those are the rules in the drywall world. Cut to cut, recess to recess. We don't like to do recess to cut because now one side is deeper than the other. You don't want to deepen the side. For me, everybody always has their humble opinion. This first one is 23 by 18. So I'm going to go 23 down, 23 down by 18 by 18. T-square makes it easier. You can cut it right off, razor blade it from the T-square, or just pencil it. That's what this T-square is for. If you don't have a T-square, you can use a 1x2 or 2x4 straight edge and just mark each side. Then and run your straight edge. So now I have my first patch piece. Cut that out with the razor blade. Some guys like to follow the line. I like to go the inside line because I know my patches are gonna have to fit. I don't want them really tight. I want them to go in without fighting them, so I always go on to my inside of my line. You go in the center of the line. It's just, these are little things that make the job a little easier. Save a few minutes here and there. Cut back. Always snap the sheetrock. Cut the back side. Brown paper edge. Scrap. Patch number 1's ready to go. So that was my biggest one. I always do my biggest one first. Patch 1 done. Now we can go to patch number 2. The next biggest patch will be 20 by 16. So I like to see which side's 20, 20. So we'll go this side. 20, 20 by 16. Correct? By 20. Patch number 2. Patch number 2 ready. Alright, need another piece of sheetrock, 1/2 inch. See what I got. Got one more piece in my truck. So this will work out perfectly. Alright. 13.5 by 19. Pencil it with your T-square. Done with my T-square, so I put it away. One more tool in my way. Out of my way. Cut your piece. Cut your piece. That's why I changed out the razor. It makes cutting new sheetrock easier with a brand new razor. If you have a dual used razor, it makes rigid cuts. Razors used to last all day, but they kind of make them so you have to switch them out. They don't want you to not buy new razors. So now I got patch number 3. 2, 1, all my patches. Easy to carry, ready to go. Bring my razor blade back in because I will have to cut it out, maybe even my pencil. But let's go inside and install these 3 patches. So if your pieces are not fitting good, you might have to cut them back a little bit with the razor blade. That's fine and dandy, that's part of the job. Alright, get your piece in. Remember your wood's right here, here. That's where you're going to screw it to. So it's good to put the screws on it because that also marks where your studs are. Or you can mark them with a pencil, whatever's easiest for you. Never hold your sheet up with your head because it compresses your vertebrae. That's bad news. Hold it up with your hand. Get a couple screws in. Sometimes easier to hit the main stud. Alright, now she's good. Now you can go ahead and add a screw. I try to do a layout. Let's have some pride in our work and lay it out nicely. A lot of guys don't think it needs a lot of screws because, oh, well, it'll hold with mud. No. If this patch is moving and flexing, especially if the AC kicks on and there's movement, your patch can crack out. You want to do all this work and then your patch cracks out, so add plenty of screws. If you don't have enough screws, well, you better have enough to do your project. Tighten it up. Make sure the screws are in. Any screws that aren't in, back them out. And then reset them so you're hitting a stud. Nice and tight, like that. Since I already have the ladder here, I'm going to do the next step. That way I don't have to move the ladder twice. 6-inch knife, always scrape the areas. I like to scrape the outside too so there's no boogers, goobers, any loose stuff, any high points. Fiberglass mesh. I don't care what everybody on YouTube says. I always get saying this stuff's garbage. This is the go-to stuff. I've been in drywall for 25 plus years. Since 1997, I've been a licensed drywaller for well over 12 years. One callback for a crack, and it wasn't my fault. Don't use paper tapes. Spray glue is a basic 3M glue. It's not recommended, but I like to do a quick tack spray. Any other damaged areas like this, like water damage, I might put a little extra. Also, when you're done using it, if you tip the can upside down and blow it through, it'll clean out the nozzle. The fiberglass mesh is already sticky. Cooler weather, it's not as sticky, but it helps hold it to the ceiling. Sometimes when you go and you get it all fiberglass and you go get your mud, all your fiberglass is falling down or it's starting to fall down, and it's kind of aggravating, especially if your hands are full with a pan and knife and mudding tools. Then you have to put down your mudding tools and put the tape back up. So that's why I use a spray glue. It's an optional product. Gives it better bond. I really recommend it like on patio dusty drywall, water damaged drywall. That extra bond. Push down this tape seam here that it get it all taped up. It's all pushed down, ready to go. So that patch is ready for mud. So now I can go work on my other patches, knowing that one is ready. Same thing, bigger piece. If it doesn't fit correctly, you might have to cut it back a little bit with your razor, that's fine. But once your pieces are ready to fit, your puzzle pieces, like I said, hold it up with your hands. If you need to, hold it up. Don't use your head. Never use your head to hold up sheetrock, no matter how big or small it is. This is when you want magnetized Phillips heads. Put a screw in. Get another one on this side. And also helps if you get it in the stud. So take it in a little more to hit your stud. Now you don't have to sit there and hold it. Same thing here. Plenty of screws, plenty of screws. Every 2 to 4 inches, I like to add a screw. I like to get screws on all 4 sides if possible. At least both sides. You don't put 100 screws in, you gotta still space them out. Too many screws can be a bad thing. Looks good. Same thing here. Scrape it, scrape it, scrape it. I only want to move my ladder once. Spray glue, optional. Just hit the seams. Spray up the excess. Fiberglass. We're doing everything we can per ladder move. So we're not going up and down the ladder 100 times. Trust me. Up and down the ladder all day long is exhausting. Fiberglass, I like to go past my original and kind of overlap it. Extra credit. Intersection's the weakest point, so that double layer over the intersection. Strong point. Press down, press down, press down. Notice there's no, that recessed edge I cut out. Now it's nice and flush. Flush, flush, flush. So it's an easier mud job now. I don't have to try to float out this area, less mud here, more mud there. Now it's just one tight coat. Next patch. Ladder over. Same thing here. If it doesn't fit, cut it back a little bit. Sometimes guys like to cut back the sheetrock here on the edge. You're kind of whittling your patch to make the patch fit. Your measurements are good, your cutouts are good, they fit pretty good. You're always going to have a little gap, no worry, we're going to pre-fill all this. Same thing here, just hold it up till you get a screw ready. Magnetized tip helps a lot. It's your best friend when you're working alone. There you go. Now add screws. Nice layout. Nice layout. Make it nice and pretty. Take pride in your work. Take pride in your work. Make sure you catch your stud. Go in a little more. All four edges that I put my back, adding screws. Nice tight patch. Perfect patch. Perfect patch. You're on the outside edge. You can toenail it inward to catch your stud. I get one more on the edge here of the corner. That's a nice hang job. Same thing here with your 6. You can scrape it. Get all that loose boogers out. Scrape it. Scrape it. Outside edge. Get any goobers out of the way. Spray glue. Spray glue. Spray glue. Spray glue. I know I'm done with my spray glue, so I'm going to tip the can upside down. This is the same thing you do with spray paint. You're just clearing the nozzle with the aerosol. You don't want to clog tip the next time you use it a week or a month from now. Fiberglass. See how it's trying to fall down on me? Didn't push it down. That's why I like to use a spray glue so it doesn't fall down on me. I'll go to my truck, mix up some mud, and I come back down, all my tape's on the floor. So that's why I use a spray glue. Optional. It's optional, but for me it's worth the $10, $12 a can it's worth. because it helps me out. It cost me more than $12 to retake this after I mixed my mud. Overlapping. Once it's all taped, push down your tape. Everything's pushed down. I don't want little creases in my tape. So it looks good. Pretty much done. Hanging, taped, ready for mud. So you did one long piece. Alright, now put away your tools and time to do some mudding. Let's get to mudding. First two. If you drop screws, a guy like me, I like to pick up my screws. I don't like to waste materials. Your demoed screws are garbage, but that could do another patch there, what I dropped, so that's why I keep it. It's metal. Adds up. Everything's put away. Get all your tools out of the way. You got enough stuff going on here, you don't want to be tripping on hanging tools. We're done with hanging, so we just treat it. The hanger is done. Now we're going to get the mudder guy in. The sheetrocker is complete. See how the tip's peeling down? If I didn't use spray glue, all of that would have fell down. So that's why we like to use the spray glue. But she's ready. Let's go get some mud. Back in my truck. Put away all the stuff you're done using. For me, it's my hanging tools. Don't need the tape measure no more. Everything's put away, out of way. Got enough going on. I don't need a bunch of hanging tools in my way. First coat mud. You're always going to need a bucket of fresh water. This is 5-minute mud, or you could use 20-minute mud or joint compound. With this, it's such a small patch area. I'm going to just do a quick first coat with 5-minute mud. I'm going to mix it in my pan. It's easier to mix by pan. I keep my 5-minute mud in a bucket with a lid. It keeps water from dripping in it. This is my go-to for patchwork. Basic method, my 6-inch knife. I'm using a larger pan. Most pans people buy are like a 14-inch, 12-inch pan.
Voiceover. Yeah, so I like to use the 18-inch pan. Most of the pans people can get in the store 12 or 14-inch pans. I only use a bigger pan because I can get more mud in it. Hot muds, 2 scoops of water seems to work. 2 spongefuls of water for a 3/4 pan of mud. This is an 18-inch pan, so if you have a 12-inch pan, maybe start with 1 spongeful of fresh water. The reason we use fresh water is that the fresh water doesn't set up the material quicker. If you use dirty water, the materials sometimes will set up a lot faster than they say. Of course, we're talking about quick set hot muds only. If you're using joint compounds, those take overnight to dry. But I work with hot muds because these are one-trip drywall repairs I do. This is more intermediate, professional grade materials using these hot muds, quick set muds. If you're not comfortable with your mudding skills, your drywall skills, then always stick to a joint compound. It's an easier mud to work with because with a joint compound, if you make a mistake, you can sand away your mistakes the next day. With these hot muds, they call them hot muds because they chemically set up. Since I'm using a 5-minute mud, it's going to chemically set up in 5 minutes. And once it fully sets up, it's going to be rock hard, hard as cement, because it's chemically setting. Once you add the water, it activates the chemicals in it, and it creates it's not hot, but it does get warm, and it does set up. So that's why we just call it hot mud. 5-minute hot muds, you want to mix it nice and thick for your first coat. It's not like a joint compound when you go to coat the patch. It's going to be real heavy coat. You kind of do a good coat, but you're not trying to build it up. You don't want a big old hump on the wall. All right, so let's first coat this. What I like to do always on my tape seams, my fiberglass tape seams, I like to strike them in. Striking in, all I'm doing is I'm getting that mud pushed in the gap and inside the little fiberglass mesh. We're getting that material pushed inside there. Instead of just coating over it right away, you want to get that material pushed in there, squeezed in the crevices and the gap, and it gets it in there. A lot of people probably complain they don't like fiberglass because it recracks because they don't do this step. You got to get the mud inside the grooves, the little nooks and crannies of that fiberglass mesh. Get inside the gap. Another method would be just to pre-fill all the gaps and then fiberglass over it. But I like to just do the strike-in method. If there was big gaps in the sheetrock, then of course I'd have to pre-fill it beforehand and then tape over my pre-fill. But basically make sure everything's pushed down, and then once you get it all filled in like this, now you can do a nice first coat. First coat, I'm not doing super heavy, but I am going to put all my materials that I have on my pan on the patch. I like to just get all the materials on the whole work area. Just use up everything in my pan. And that way I could just trowel it down, feather off everything one time. Also, I like to coat everything. If I'm on ladders, I like to reach as far as I can and get as much done as I can without having to move the ladder. Feathering your edges, I always feather the edges. You just basically have to pivot the side of your knife. Just feather that edge. You're getting rid of that edge. That extra mud you took off from feathering your edge, you can fill in any low spots. Once your edge is feathered out, I'm basically going to go down the center of this patch. Right down the center of it. And then I'm going to feather the sides and feather the sides. So basically you're going to have 2 lap marks if you do it correctly. That's a good patch job. Good first coat. Edges are feathered off. And we are working with hot mud, so you're not going to put the mud on super heavy because the mud doesn't shrink back like regular joint compounds. Joint compounds, sometimes you coat a little heavier because you know that's going to dry and shrink back overnight. With these hot muds, they go on however you put the mud on. So you want to just put enough material on, I would say like in between a skim coat and a coat. You don't want a super heavy patch because everything you put on, you're going to turn around and have to slick it off and get the extra material off so you don't have a big hump on the ceiling. That's why this is more of a professional grade type material to work with, because you're going to have to put the material in a certain way, and then you're going to have to feather it off, and then you're going to have to slick it back so you can follow it through with another coat.
Just a little more. Since I'm still coating, I'm not gonna clean my pan. That way the mud will set up the same time as other. I don't need much to finish it up. Add a little more water. Excess, like I said, you can just drip it out. No big deal. Alright, coating knife. Let's go finish that patch we started. This is 5-minute mud. So that's, if you're not comfortable working fast, then just use a joint compound. said, I like to get all my mud on the gut. Feather the edges, any leftover. Go down the center, feather your sides. Feather your sides. That's a good first coat. Since I'm in here and I have a little bit of mud left, let's go ahead and check our other patch while we're in here. It shouldn't be set up yet, but we don't want to waste extra materials. So what I'm going to do here is take what I have, go down this trouble center area. Materials because I don't want to have to clean my pan and waste a bunch of materials, make a big mess. It's starting to set up enough where I can almost turn around and semi-coat it anyways. I'm going to use all my extra materials I mixed up in here so I have minimal cleanup. Look at that. Now we've got this whole thing semi-coated. What I had in my pan. I guess we could consider this a second coat. Second skin coat. But I don't know about you. Those are my first coats. Looks pretty good to me. So we're going to go ahead and wash it up since I used all my mud up. Minimal cleanup. The mud's starting to set up, so let's clean our tools and knives. If you have a washout area inside, that's fine, or a hose washout area, that's fine. But I do all my mixing on my truck tailgate with the water bucket. I'm just going to clean my tools. See, it's starting to set up on the tools. So it doesn't come off as easy. That's why when it catches, it sets up on your tools, and you're going to be scraping and sanding, wasting a bunch of time and energy for nothing. 5-minute mud, so you want to wash your tools up before 5 minutes is up. Even though it's 5 minutes, sometimes it takes a little longer. That's just a time gauge, really. And depending on water, too, sometimes they'll set up faster, longer. Also, if the walls are painted like a semi-gloss paint, it'll take longer to set up. Especially with 20-minute muds. I know that for sure with 20 minutes. That's why I don't like to use 20-minute muds on painted wall areas. The 20-minute top will set up, but the inside of the mud won't set up, and then you try to drag it, slick it out, it drags. So sometimes easier with me to work with these 5-minute muds. Once your tools are cleaned up, you're going to need a sponge. We're going to go slick out that hot mud. I have several videos showing the slick out technique. Hot mud technique only. 5-minute, 20-minute, 40-minute, 90-minute. Once the mud's starting to set up, you're going to have to slick it out with a wet sponge and a 6-inch knife. So let's go inside and slick it out. Your hot muds. See, it's damp to touch. It's a little wet, but it's not fully dry. You don't want it fully dry. Your sponge, get rid of the edges. That's the most important. Feathering your edges. I kind of just go over everything real quick with the sponge. That just gives it a layer of moisture. Your straight part of your 6. Sometimes I like to go the opposite direction that I coated it. And you're just slicking it out. Slicking it out. See, it's taking the extra mud and I'm kind of going this direction, almost turning my knife and pushing down at the same time. It's taking the extra mud off. Just Get that out of the way. There's more moisture in the wall. Go ahead. Slick out technique. Done with hot muds. Most important, your edge. If you slick it out good enough, it's almost going to be like another coat. That's why I like to go the opposite direction sometimes. It fills in any deep ends. Edges. Look at that. I don't know about you. That's nice. Slicked out. That's almost ready for texture, but I'm going to do another tight coat. Slick it out, it's almost a perfect patch. Same thing over here. This one's rough. See, she's still wet, but she's workable. If it's not setting up yet, just give it a couple more minutes. Set up. Maybe taking off the extra mud. Black marks, most important. Feather your edge. First coat, slicked out hot mud. Remember how I said big old patch? We could have sheetrocked it, but it's all the same once you get it all mudded and coated out. That one's a little rough, so we're gonna go mix another pan of 5-minute mud. Gonna do a tight second coat over it. I always go past the work area from the first coat, and I might go the opposite direction. But let's go ahead and get the second coat. We need about 3/4 of a pan or so. Not much. 1 full sponge. 2 sponges, because I know I need to mix it thinner. Same thing here. Just tossing and turning. I don't know if you ever made pancakes or bread. I would just say we're kind of like making pancakes. Second coat mud. Just a tad bit thinner than your first coat. Go past your patch. You can also go the opposite coating direction, which is not necessary, but you can do it. I always like to get all my mud on my patch before I trowel it down. As far as I can reach. Feather your edges. This mud's pulling scratches because there's boogers in my mud. That's fine. Don't worry about it. There you go. Got rid of the booger. our second coat. It should be set up. Oh yeah. Your edges. Always get rid of those edges. Slicked out. It's ready for texture. After you're done with your second coat, if it still looks rough and doesn't look perfect, you could do a tight third coat. Won't hurt to do a third coat, nice tight third coat. I can do 2 coats on my jobs because I do it every day, so it's pretty good. I'm gonna let it set up, give it a few minutes to really dry, and then I'm gonna finish it off. We're gonna do a skip trowel. I don't know if you could see it. Skip trowel texture design. Very common texture in these newer houses. I'm just gonna skip trowel this whole area. Just make one big patch area. So we're just gonna let it set up fully, nice strong hot mud set up, and then we're gonna do a skip trowel texture right over it. Textures, I'm just gonna use a joint compound. Joint compound textures have to dry overnight. Never texture with hot muds. I know a lot of guys try to do it, but the joint compounds are a creamier finish. It gives you a better texture finish with the joint compounds. Let's take a break, let this dry. I'm gonna come back in here and get it all textured up and get it all cleaned up, and then we're done for the day. All right, give it a few minutes, set up. Oh yeah, she's set up. Texture mud, heavy pancake batter. Keep on going, get it all textured out. Practice makes perfect on this texture, so maybe practice on a scrap piece of sheetrock, piece of cardboard, until you get your technique down. You don't just watch this YouTube video and think you can texture stuff. Move along. Move along. Battery's getting low, so if the camera dies in the middle of the project, you kind of know the process. Get this area finished, textured up, cleaned up. Let it dry for 24 hours, and then you can turn around and sand and primer the texture. We're just going to get this little area finished up. I'm getting a low battery warning. Trowel it down, trowel it down, trowel it down, trowel it down. Feather your edges. Any light spots, fill in. Keep on trucking along. Heavy skip trowel. Heavy skip trowel. See how easy it is with the 6-inch knife? The knife, how I'm holding the knife is barely holding it. I'm putting no pressure on the knife. I'm just letting it skip across. That's why they call it skip trowel. Because the mud's literally skipping off your knife. Skip, 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 skip. Any light spots? Trowel it down. Trowel it down, trowel it down, trowel it down. Last spot, and then I'm finished. Then we're going to clean up. Take it past the patch, your outside edges, take it further so it blends in. Blends in, blends into the existing. Nice transition, feathered out. We got one little area here, and then we are complete. Areas, sheetrocked, tape, coated 2 times, and then finish it off with the skip trowel. Did all this less than 2-hour job. Feather it out. Sometimes I like to go this way, feather it into the existing, feather it in the existing. Take it out further and wider. Trowel it down, trowel it down, trowel it down. One little spot left. Can we do it? I don't use a lot of mud. Texture this whole area with a 3/4 of a pan of mud. This is a skip trowel. Skip trowel. Skip trowel techniques. I have several videos on skip trowel, so you can watch my texture video playlist. Learn how to do skip trowels. There's skip trowels with sand. There's skip trowels without sand. There's light skip trowels, heavy skip trowels. Skip trowels almost like Dr. Seuss. There's many in between. Light, heavy, sandy. Any light areas, feathered out, feathered out. Go around, double check your work area, different angles, different lighting, changes everything. Over here I can see I didn't feather it out good, so I'm going to take it out and feather it out. Feather it out. I don't want no start marks. Any start marks, you cut them out, feather it out. Feather it out, feather it out, feather it out. Nice transition. Double check everything from the bottom, different lighting, different angles. Everything looks good. I see a light spot. A light spot here and a knockdown that they could knock down there. Here's a light spot. No problem. Add some skip trowel. On here, feather it out. Feather it out. Feather it out. Feather it out. That's a perfect skip trowel patch job that we did from start to finish. Less than 2 hours. So I said that big patch, we just patch those in because we're going to end up mudding and texturing that whole area anyways. Let that skip trowel dry for 24 hours. Lightly sand it, primer and paint. Get everything cleaned up, put your mud away, good to go. So hey, if you haven't liked or subscribed, go ahead and do that now before this video is over. We're trying to grow this channel. I need more subscribers. I need more comments. I need more likes. Look at that, it didn't get knocked down. That's why you want to double check your work. The good tradesman always double checks their work. Walk away from your job and then come back and look at it. Do one more walkthrough. Double check everything. You didn't forget your tools. You didn't forget anything. Double check your work from a different point of view. Take a deep breath. Come back and look at your work. Different point of view. Different lighting. You don't have lights, you're going to have to get halogens. Turn on lights. The lighting helps. You can see here it's a real rough skip trowel, nothing picky. Go ahead and subscribe and like, and thank you for watching this video. Patching from start to finish with the skip trowel finish. Hey, go ahead and leave a comment. Thank you.